Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Um, Today I have a handful of cool things. I had a thought this week. I was thinking because I hear from a lot of people that, they love their tools, but they're afraid to beat on them, and I get it. When I do a lot of stuff around the house, and I beat on my own tools, but I kind of feel bad about it because they're really pretty. When I was running some wires for security cameras in my house about a couple months ago, I took one of my half-inch socket tang chisels and I was just beating it through a floor joist in the upstairs, and it was like that hard native lumber, and I'm just like torquing this thing and just ripping chunks out of it. And I kind of felt bad. I beat the crap out of it. It was just fine. It actually shaved hair. It was awesome. I'm pretty happy about that. But I got to thinking, the then you go, if you want to get some beater chisels or something like that on Amazon, they're never good. They're always crap. You'll buy them and the steel will be soft, or they'll just be just pieces of junk, or they'll be warped. And you go take a couple cuts off of some soft wood and the edge is just gone. So I just got to thinking that the world kind of needs a good beater chisel that's just indestructible. At least I do. I know I do, because it's this odd anomaly that when you have something that's a piece of crap enough to want to beat on it, it tends to not hold an edge very well. So I think I solved that today, or this week, should I say. And I have a new thing. You can already see it in the frame of the camera down here. It's a new thing. And what I wanted to do was just essentially make it a one-piece chisel. Something you could literally beat on that with a claw hammer. You could beat on that with a sledgehammer. It's got the same ergonomics that my regular chisels do, essentially, because it's roughly the same shape. And I wanted to make it out of CPM MagnaCut, which I did. This is CPM MagnaCut. And I also wanted to employ cryogenics on this, just shallow cryogenics, because MagnaCut actually responds to that. Most steels won't respond to that very well. So we went with MagnaCut, cryo, and right now it's got some really, really pretty maple scales on it. And it's got a thing to hang it on a tool board or whatever. But something that you can beat to death, that is as close to indestructible as any chisel would ever get. And that's pretty much it. And I also wanted to make it affordable, because I know when we get into MagnaCut and stuff like that, they're not always affordable. But in an instance like this, where I don't have to essentially make the handle, I don't have to make the socket, I don't have to make an end cap for this, and 1 inch is the perfect size, because for the diameter of the handle, that needs to be 1 inch. So 1 inch would actually be the cheapest one. So, and obviously custom options. You don't have to have curly maple. You could do whatever you want. I have scales sitting here that are G10 that I made for this same chisel, to switch those out, because there's nothing about curly maple that's indestructible. It's just not. So it's stabilized. It's better than most, but for the indestructible, honestly, we could even do carbon fiber on that. I could do carbon fiber as a custom option on these things. But, and it's MagnaCut, so it'll never rust. I mean, you could leave it outside in the rain, won't rust. The hardware is stainless steel on it. Just a very good beater, though obviously, for obvious reasons, you wouldn't want to use your good mallets on this. That's just not what this is made for. This is made to be beat on with whatever you got. I mean, if you have a claw hammer sitting there, a small sledgehammer, a big sledgehammer, it just doesn't matter. Just beat the crap out of it. The back end of this is soft enough to where it won't tear your hammers up, but it's hard enough to where it won't tear up, ideally. And it's not super hard back here, so like if you're beating on it, it's not gonna shatter or anything like that. This is slightly annealed back here. Yeah, I haven't put the G10 scales on it since I've completed the blade, actually, because I completed the blade with these curly maple scales, so I kind of want to see what the G10 looks like. But as always, you can email Andrew@KimmonsHandTools.com if you want one of these. I can do them in any size, but the 1 inch is going to be the cheapest because that'll involve the least machining, because I have to start with a piece of 1 inch stock. So if you want it in 1/2 inch, that's fine, I can do that, but it's going to be actually more expensive than the 1 inch. It's a weird thing with that. So I can do these pretty much anywhere from, you know, the same 1/16 inch up to 2 inch. I think that's the right one. Yeah. Let's see what that looks like. I only had some thin G10 sitting around, so this is kind of a thin handle, but prototype. You never have the right stuff to make a prototype like the exact one you want to make. That's just life. I just want to see what this looks like. Show you guys what it looks like in case you want a G10 option. And if you want it in carbon fiber, just let me know. I can actually do this with carbon fiber scales on it. That'd look kind of cool. And talk about indestructible. I know it's pretty common in the knife industry to use carbon fiber for scales, so if you want to go that route, let's do it. Okay, that's what it'll look like in G10. It's much less flattering, but more indestructible, I would say. So that's an option. And this is the same thickness as a regular blade. Same, everything's the same. It's just a CPM MagnaCut chisel made in a virtually indestructible manner. So this is a new one. You can email Andrew@KimmonsHandTools.com. I could make you one. They're not that, this is going to be the same price as the regular chisels. Why is it the same price? Well, because it's CPM MagnaCut, so the steel's more, the grinding on MagnaCut takes longer, but I also save some time on components, so it's not going to cost more than a regular chisel. So if you just need one good beater around to use in the shop or around the house, and like this would be contractor friendly, take it to the job site, throw it in the bed of the truck, it's not going to rust in the rain, do whatever the heck you want to do with it, beat on it with a sledgehammer, this thing will survive it. It'll do, and not only will the chisel itself survive it, the edge will survive it. And that's a big reason why I wanted to use CPM MagnaCut and kind of go all out, is so that you don't have to have a beater chisel that's cheap and pathetic. You can have a beater chisel that performs, you know, to the highest possible capability of modern metallurgy, so that your beater holds an edge. And it's, you know, it's just funny. It's funny that beaters tend to be really bad at holding an edge, and it's like that's what you're doing the hardest use tasks with. So if anything, you'd want a beater that actually stays sharp. And I use them all kinds of ways I shouldn't use them in the house. Plaster, all kinds of crap. I definitely use tools quite hard, but it's a little prettier that way, I think, but that's up to everybody to decide. Now, mind you, that handle material, it's not like, I mean, all wood is different. If you want one in curly maple, it's not going to look exactly like that. I have some of this left, so if you want one, the earlier orders will be the same wood as that. I have very little of that left though, but same price as a regular chisel. Pretty cool stuff. The ultimate beater. Beat it to death. All right. Other than that, I have a handful of things going out today. all these are going out today anyway. This one has another tool with the order, so I'm going to coat this with oil and put it somewhere safe. These are CPM Magna. Actually, all of these are CPM Magna Cut. Every one of these is in Magna Cut. We have the blue curly maple, the electric blue, and then we have standard curly maple here, all with end caps, socket tank style. This is a type of pine that the customer wanted to use, and it actually stabilized really well. So it's quite dense for pine. It's very resinous. I was surprised at just how resinous that was. You could really smell it while you were turning. It was really aromatic. And this right here is a bevel-less firmer chisel. No bevels, 2-inch. And yes, I can do these too if you want to go bevel-less type of chisel. Any of these, you can always order whatever you want. Just get a hold of me at andrew@kimmonshandtools.com or message me, Facebook, Instagram on those. I get to them. I get around to everything every few days or so. I've had a very crazy year this year, but I'm trying to keep up on everything. I don't know if I've done a video with these, but I have another new thing sitting here because I've had enough requests for people that want drawer lock chisel pairs. So I've started figuring out how to machine drawer lock chisels. So if these are like the old Lie-Nielsen style that they discontinued because people liked these, and not a lot of people did. I see why they discontinued them, but if you want these are actually listed on my Etsy store right now, Kimmons Hand Tools. There's a lot of things actually listed on my Etsy store right now. I put up quite a few things on there that you can order, and I did that because international customers had no way to order, because through my website I couldn't do any international sales because it gets into all this weird tax stuff that I don't want to deal with personally. I already have enough crap going on. But Etsy takes care of that for me. They charge a hefty fee, but that's okay. A lot of international people haven't been able to order for like years. So if you're international, if you're outside the US, go to Kimmons Hand Tools Etsy. That's all one word, Kimmons Hand Tools. And I have everything on there's pre-order. None of that's in stock, but there's a bunch of different sets, like Cocobolo sets with caps and without caps. There's, I think, like 4-piece curly maple set, 7-piece, 12-piece. Like, there's all kinds of stuff on that Etsy store. The new dovetail, or not the dovetail chisels, the new fishtail chisels are listed on that. And if you want custom options, like if you want different handle materials, whatever, then just go ahead and email me, andrew@kimmonshandtools.com, and I'll make a custom listing. Like, you don't have to only buy what's listed on there. We can still do a bunch of other things. These are not listed currently, so email me, andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. If you want a pair of drawer lock chisels, you can either email me or go to the Etsy shop, Kimmons Hand Tools Etsy shop, and get these. Honestly, I'm pretty excited about this. This is, out of every new thing I've come up with, and part of the reason why I've been coming up with a lot of new stuff is just kind of boredom after hours. Since the whole divorce thing, on the days that I don't have my daughter, I have some spare time, so I tinker in the evenings a bit with stuff, because why not? It's something productive to do. But this is one of the things that has come of late night tinkering. And yeah, the ergonomics are pretty cool. I wish I could show. I probably can. I have another hand. Kind of how that lands in your hand. So the ergonomics on it are pretty good. I'm quite happy with it. I would venture to say that with these thick curly maple scales, I don't want to say that because I don't know. Yeah, this actually feels more ergonomic than the standard chisel. I don't know what it is, but there's an ergonomics here that's kind of magical. Magical, I guess, would not be the right word, but it's very cool. Anyway, email me, andrew@kimmonshandtools.com, if you want one of these bad beasts. I can do these anywhere from 1/16 of an inch up to 2 inch. If you don't want bevels, we can make it a firmer. We could make this a paring chisel. I really don't care. Whatever the heck you want to do. If you want framers on this platform, I could make framing chisels on this same exact platform and make them huge. Just let me know. I mean, the possibilities that open up with custom tool making is just nuts. And I had a customer actually request something like this probably 3 years ago, and I had completely forgot about it until I made it. I made it, and then it flashed on me talking to that guy a few years ago. Was it kind of exactly what he'd wanted? And I was like, oh, I can make that. It was before I started doing anything with scales at all, so I didn't know. I hadn't really gotten very good at that yet, but this thing's cool. I'm going to put this to ridiculously hard use around the house as my around the house beater home project chisel. And if you're a contractor or a finish carpenter, whatever, throw one of those suckers in your tool bag. You'll never be without the ultimate chisel, honestly. And just in time for Christmas. And you're also getting MagnaCut for the same price as a regular chisel. So that in and of itself is pretty awesome. Like, for the same price as a regular A2 chisel, you can upgrade to freaking MagnaCut and get the performance of CPM MagnaCut with a little bit of shallow cryogenics. And I'll talk a little bit about cryo since I'm employing cryo on these. Cryo is one of those things that gets overused in terms of it being a term to attract people for marketing. They throw cryo on somewhere, and for some reason in people's mind, they think it must be good. Like, they're adding an extra step. They must really love their customers. When the reality behind cryo is that in many cases, in all cases, this is just metallurgy. This is science. Like, when you have verifiable, proven science, you can't argue that based on opinion. You can't sit there and say, well, I think this will work better. No, it doesn't work that way. It's verifiable fact. And when you're making tools with steels like A2, O1, basic carbon steels, most of the steels used for making chisels these days are basic steels. And you're employing cryogenics on that. That can only be for two reasons. One, marketing. Because the actual increase in performance you're going to get with subpar heat treatment, with slightly subpar heat treatment on A2, you may get a 0.7% increase, roughly, to maybe 1% increase in hardness in particular, and not really anything in terms of toughness with a base steel. With a basic A201, you're not getting anything. And if you see results bigger than that when you employ cryo on A2, it's because your heat treatment was a subpar heat treatment process to begin with. And you shouldn't have retained austenite in A2 or O1. You shouldn't have a massive amount of retained austenite to the point where when you employ cryogenics, you're getting a conversion. There shouldn't be anything left to convert to austenite during the cryogenic process. And if there is, you effed up your heat treatment. Whoever's, because most of these companies contract it out, whoever's doing your heat treatment for you could do much better. So 9 times out of 10, it's marketing. Cryo, we're better. That's the whole thing. Now, you have steels out there that are high alloy CPM steels. Chances are, if you have a very high alloy content, something like CPM M4 or MagnaCut, some of the more advanced CPM alloys, that not just CPM, because that doesn't tell you what the alloying constituents are. High alloy steels, particularly high alloy CPM steels, they will benefit from cryo to some extent, but that varies depending on the heat treatment process that was used and the particular material itself. Like, you're going to have a different level if you take MagnaCut and M4 and you essentially, you go through and you do a soak and quench the exact same way with the exact same temperatures, the exact same procedures. You're going to have different levels of retained austenite in those two materials because they're different materials with different alloying constituents. Thus, each of those materials would benefit to varying degrees from employing cryogenics. So it just depends. It all depends on the material and how it was heat treated. Generally speaking, I hate to generalize because generalization doesn't work with metallurgy, but to put it in the most simple terms possible for people, the higher temperature and the more rapid the quench, the less retained austenite you're going to have. But if that were true, you just heat the crap out of it and quench it in water, right? No, it'll crack, or you'll end up with a blade that has no toughness. Like, yeah, you're going to get a lot of hardness out of it, but what good is hardness if you cut a piece of pine and your edge cracks? Like, that's too much heat, too rapid of a quench. There's materials out there that are designed to be water quenched. For example, it's like W1 and alloys I don't even work with, but there are water quenched alloys. And then you move up to oil quenched alloys. Then you move up to air hardening alloys and stuff like that, to where they need different rates of cooling. And generally speaking, higher alloy steels with higher carbon, you're going to end up, like, you can oil quench them, but you can also air quench them. The only difference is it's like you're going to end up with varying levels of retained austenite. And that's as far as I can go without getting into my particular heat treatment procedures, which I don't particularly like to do, because then everybody would be able to do this and then I'd be out of a job. So like, I have to kind of, to some extent, protect what I've studied, for 20 years of my life to figure out. And I don't need companies in China catching on to what works and cranking them out by the millions. So they can figure it out. They have teams of metallurgists and scientists over in China. If I can figure it out, they can figure it out. But I guarantee you right now, the only reason why they don't heat treat things the way I do is because the way I do it is complicated and it's expensive and it's time consuming. And it's almost impossible to do on a mass scale. So that's just true. Anyway, back to cryogenics. Most of the time it's marketing. Sometimes it's not. It depends on the alloy and it depends on how it was heat treated. If you're getting benefits cryogenically treating A2, you effed up your heat treatment. I'm sorry. Or whoever does your heat treatment effed it up. Do it right. Lower alloy, low to medium alloy steels, high carbon steels like A2, O1, they don't need cryo. As a matter of fact, most steels don't need and don't benefit from cryo. Cryo can actually hurt a lot of steels. It's something you have to do intelligently and precisely. It's like driving a race car. You don't put freaking Ernest from that movie in an F1 car and expect that it's going to go well. It doesn't work. The dude's an idiot, and that's not Not a good idea. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but it's kind of true. It's like, you don't just, like, if you're going to do cryo, like deep cryogenics, you don't just take a piece of steel and chuck it in a bucket of liquid nitrogen. That's essentially ruined. The micro cracking all throughout that blade is going to be, don't even go there. If you're going to employ deep cryogenics, you really, it's a very, very slow process. Very slow process to bringing the temperature down all the way to negative 300 C. And it's just really slow. It takes hours and hours and hours. You don't want to shock it. If you shock it, that's where you're going to get cracks, because after you quench a piece of steel, that's when it's at its hardest state. It's literally at its hardest and most fragile state. So you take that and you shock the crap out of it with thermal shock. What do you think is going to happen? It's just like, you know, I don't know if anybody's heard those stories, but it's like driving down the road with a, you know, you have your exhaust manifolds glowing red hot, and then you pull over and spray a garden hose on it. Like, yeah, you can crack an exhaust manifold. Same kind of thing. That thermal shock's the same for regular steel. My analogies are sucking today, but hey, I have them, so whatever. Anyway, cryo, very rarely necessary. Necessary in some cases, optional in most. But when you get into low and medium alloy steels, marketing. 9 times out of 10, marketing. So whenever you see cryo plastered on a website and the blades are A2 or whatever, that's marketing. They just want to sell stuff, and they want to use that word to sell stuff because cryo sounds technological and fancy, and they must really know their shit because they're doing cryo. It's like, it's not that complicated, honestly. So yes, shallow cryogenics on these, which most steels don't respond to anyway, but MagnaCut does. MagnaCut actually can even respond to as little as negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see a slight conversion, which is really pretty cool. MagnaCut is like, it's one of those steels that's almost, compared to what technology was 20 years ago, it's almost paranormal. Where it's like, you have a super tough tool steel that's as tough as a high-speed steel, but it doesn't rust, and it responds to negative 10 degrees after the quench. Like, that's the weirdest crap ever. It's like almost paranormal, because normally how you would get corrosion resistance out of an alloy is to start adding chromium. And you add chromium until you get to like 15% or so, 16%, and it's like, okay, that's a stainless steel. You have steels like D2 that are semi-stainless that kind of ride that line where it's like, they'll still rust and they still kind of have some toughness, but that's because they didn't put a ton of chromium in it, enough to make it a stainless, but they didn't put so little as to make it a tool steel. And MagnaCut breaks that entire thing because there's not nearly the chromium in this. They've found many other fascinating ways to get the corrosion resistance out of it. So, and they start to play with nitrogen. There's a number of steels that I've tinkered with that nitrogen is actually a part of the alloying constituent and can add a lot of interesting traits to a steel. I'm trying to remember the first one that I ever tinkered with. It wasn't MagnaCut. I don't know. This is just, you know, I don't exactly have my notes sitting here and stuff. If I was going to make an accurate video about that, I'd probably have some notes. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. Got a little bit of cryo going on. Got some pretty ridiculous edge retention. And I just don't think, as far as a chisel goes, on the face of this planet, nothing is going to beat that. Not a thing is going to beat that. And you don't have to use it as a beater either. Good ergonomics. If you just want to have a set of these and those be your chisels, go for it. Hang them on your tool board. Quarter, half, 3/4, 1 inch. Do a 4-piece set, hang that on your board. You'll have like the highest performing blades on the face of the planet. The fact is, you can also take them and beat them with a sledgehammer and they just won't die. So Andrew at kimmonshandtools.com. If you want to get a hold of one of these or a set of these or whatever, you can do them in whatever sizes you want. Be a ton of fun. Perfect for Christmas present for woodworkers who don't like to beat up their tools. Get one you can beat up. There you go. You can beat the crap out of this thing until the end of time. It's like the end of the world chisel. So, to add to that, since I'm not working off of notes here, oddly, I'll add one more thing. Cryogenics changes the tempering temperature. It's kind of interesting because when you think about like a heat soak in the forge, you get it up to the temperature that you want, you allow it to soak at that temperature for a certain amount of time. That way the carbon dissolves into the interstitial spaces of the steel. Essentially, the carbon dissolves into the grain, it melts. And then when you quench it, it freezes that carbon in the interstitial space and it distorts the matrix, putting stress into it, which is what makes steel harden. So, and as always, they all do it differently. But what you use cryo for is an extension to the quench. Like a lot of people, for some reason, get in their mind that like you'll do your heat soak, you'll quench, you'll temper, and then you'll go into cryo. That won't do anything. You use cryo as an extension of the quench, like the cooling process. Like, so it'll go from forge to the quench to room temperature and then into cryo and down slowly to whatever temperature you're going down to. And then it comes out of cryo and slowly comes up to room temperature, and then you go into the tempering temperature and slowly raise it up to the tempering temperature. And then you hold that there for X amount of time. Like, for example, tempering Magna Cut takes 6 hours. 3 2-hour cycles. So this blade was after cryo, after all that stuff, this blade was tempered for 2 hours and then allowed to rest in still air until it was room temperature. And then tempered for 2 hours and then allowed to rest in still air. And then tempered for 2 hours and then allowed to rest in still air. I don't do anything the quick and cheap and easy way around here. I do things the way that I've determined works the best for these tools. And which would be a different heat treatment procedure for a knife than it would be this chisel, because they're two different tools performing two different tasks. So anyway, cryo is an extension to the quench, and I think a lot of people don't know that about cryo. Like a lot of these people that, you know, will send stuff out for cryo, it's a bad idea. That's just a bad idea, because unless you send it out to heat treat and cryo, because if you send something out for heat treat and cryo, they can actually do it properly as an extension to the quench. But like, if you quench it and then pack it up in the mail and send it for 5 days to somewhere else, the chances of that blade or that part cracking are astronomically higher. And it's like the longer a blade is left in its quenched state, and I've heard it, I've done this multiple times, where you'll quench a blade and then you're doing a bunch of them, and I've changed my procedures since this, but I'd leave them sitting over there before I go to temper, and you'll be working and you'll hear ting about a half hour later. Go back to what you're doing, ting. What's going on over there? Well, and then you temper them and you find that a couple of the blades will fall in half because they cracked just sitting there in room temperature. So like, you want to kind of get done what you're getting, get the processes rolling quickly, but don't just let fully hardened blades just sit there. Be doing something to them. Anyway, I'm going to cut this off before it gets ridiculously long. If you want any of these things, drawer lock chisels, end of the world, insane Magna Cut chisels, any of the stuff you ever see in any of these videos, email Andrew at kimmonshandtools.com, and we will get you guys some Christmas presents going. Have a great weekend out there. See you next time.